So this is what we're making. An early Navajo-style stamped silver ring adjustable using stamps from beaducation.com. So to make this ring, you need to get the inside diameter of your ring. You can use a ring sizer or you can use an existing ring. Add the thickness of the metal, and in this case, this is 0.7 of a millimeter thick. Multiply by 3.14. That will give the exact length if you're going to solder it together. Well, we're going to make it a millimeter shorter. So when I did my math, it comes out to 62 millimeters. So I'm going to cut it 61. And since this is adjustable, we can just do a quick and dirty. We don't have to use calipers. We can just use a steel rule. 61. And I'm just going to cut it with my shears. Perfect. Now, just for looks, I want to put a taper on this, just a little more aesthetically pleasing. So what we'll do is mark the center . And just a little scratch. You don't want a really deep scratch because you'll have to take it out later. Then I'll just make this 2 millimeters wider and scratch on one side, scratch on the other side. So we end up with 3 scratches, one in the middle, one on either side. And that's just so that we'll have a taper that's the same on both ends. And we'll just take a little scribe and we'll mark from the center to our outside mark. Do all 4. The parrots are having fun outside. And then what we'll do to make our life easy is we'll just use shears, cut right on that line. And you can see it's going to be very easy to clean up. So do all 4 so that we have a nice tapered shank on both ends. So when you have your ring shank so that it looks a bit like this, if it's slightly off, not quite symmetrical, use your file. And I oftentimes will just use one of the old wooden ring clamps to hold it. Then you can just brace it against your bench peg and file this way. I'm using a Swiss No. 2 cut hand file. File the ends slightly rounded. So make this as nice as you can, because when we're finished, we won't have to do anything other than polish this. So file, sand, and I use 400 grade sandpaper on a sanding stick, and then we'll get to work making it special. Take your time, make it nice. Now, the only sanding you should have to do is just right on the edge. You shouldn't have to do anything else. And we want to mark the metal as little as possible, with the exception of our stamps, because if it has fewer marks on it, it just means that we have a smaller amount of work to do. And that's one of the reasons I use the wooden ring clamp, is that it's leather lined and it doesn't mark the metal. So now we have our blank, our ring blank, and we need to anneal it before we start stamping. So we just need to bring this up to a dull red. You can use any torch for this: creme brulee torch, Smith's mini torch, orca torch. It doesn't really matter, as long as you get the material a dull red. And this is for sterling silver. We usually don't use fine silver for rings because it's too soft, it's too easily distorted. So now I have a dull red. And then we let it cool for a couple of seconds and then quench it in water. And we're ready to go to work. So dry your metal, and you need a steel bench block. What you don't want to do is you don't want to hammer into the wood when you're using stamps. Now, the stamps I'm using are from these people, adj.ring. And they are really high quality stamps. Now, the original silver jewelry made by Navajos that was stamped started in the 1850s, and they usually made their own stamps. And oftentimes it was just a piece of a file or a railroad spike or something that was steel. And because they made their own stamps, you could always tell which jeweler did which, because their stamps were individual. Well, these stamps are a lot higher quality. They're very precise, and they're easy to use because they're nice square steel, high quality steel, and they give a really good impression. So what I'm going to do is just put a line using the arrow stamp, and I'm going to make it go just in a clockwise direction. And I'm going to use it as a border stamp. I'll just shift this a little. So what I'm going to do is just place this, easily placed, easy to see because it's big enough. I'm using a chasing hammer. simple design, and I'm going to put a feather in the middle. And you can see how crisp and clear these stamps are. Now I'm going to hallmark it at this point. I have a hallmark stamp. And we're just going to form this into a ring now and polish it, and it's that simple. If you put a serious amount of stamps on it, it would be work hardened, and you would have to anneal it again before you formed it. But what we can do is just wrap it around the ring mandrel. So I'm just going to hold my thumb on it, start a lot smaller than my ring size, push it around, then slip it down. And we just need to be able to hammer it without the ends overlapping each other. Flip it over. So there it is, our adjustable ring, stamped Navajo style. So I'll just polish this up a little bit. So I just lightly polished it. And this is good for those of us that have arthritis. It will fit over the knuckle, and then you can just squeeze it so that it's the proper size. Ta-da!